Have you ever felt like the universe was trying to tell you something, but you couldn't quite understand the language? Like there's been a persistent whisper following you through your life, speaking in riddles you were never taught to decode. That subtle pull towards something greater, something more abundant that you felt but couldn't quite name. Here's the truth that most people will never discover. You didn't stumble upon this video by accident. Nothing in your life happens randomly, especially not the moments that make you pause and wonder. Your mind has already begun to shift, to awaken from a sleep so deep that most people never even realize they're in it. There's a hidden mechanism inside you that's starting to turn, like ancient gears covered in dust, finally beginning to move after years of stillness. And when that mechanism activates, certain messages start finding you. Not the messages you search for, but the ones reserved for minds that have crossed an invisible threshold. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. What you're about to discover isn't just another motivational video or wealth mindset technique. This is something far more profound, something that exists beyond the surface level of positive thinking and vision boards. We're about to explore a dimension of wealth consciousness that ancient wisdom traditions understood, but modern society has almost completely forgotten. The idea that abundance isn't something you chase, pursue, or even attract in the traditional sense. Instead, abundance is something you remember, something encoded deep within you, waiting for the right moment to emerge. Has this ever happened to you? You set a goal, you work toward it with everything you have, but somehow there's always an invisible barrier keeping you from breaking through. Or perhaps you've noticed that some people seem to effortlessly magnetize opportunities, wealth, and success, while others work twice as hard and barely make progress. The difference isn't luck, and it's not just about effort or strategy. The difference lies in something much more subtle, much more powerful. Stay with me until the end of this journey, because what we're exploring together goes beyond conventional understanding. We're talking about activating dormant codes within your consciousness, codes that were placed there long before you learned to doubt yourself, long before society taught you what was realistic or impossible. This is about accessing a frequency of abundance that doesn't require you to become someone different, but rather to remember who you truly are beneath all the conditioning. The journey we're embarking on together isn't just intellectual, it's mystical, transformative, and deeply personal. You'll discover why wealth has felt distant, why doors seemed closed, and most importantly, how the very act of watching this video marks a turning point. Because once you recognize the language that life has been speaking to you all along, once you decode those whispers you've been hearing, everything begins to shift in ways that logic alone cannot explain. Think about walking through your life right now. Every room you enter, every conversation you have, every decision you make about money, there's an invisible line you're standing in front of. It's not marked on the ground, there's no sign pointing to it, but you can feel it. That subtle resistance when you're about to make a bold financial decision. That quiet voice that says, maybe this isn't for me, when an opportunity presents itself. That threshold exists between where you are and where abundance lives. And the fascinating thing is that most people spend their entire lives standing right at that edge, looking across but never stepping over. The invisible threshold of abundance isn't about your bank account or your current circumstances. It's about something far more profound. It's about the energetic boundary between your current identity and the identity of someone who lives in natural flow with wealth. And here's what makes this so powerful. You can see the threshold. You've felt it countless times, every time you've thought about asking for that raise, starting that business, investing in yourself, or simply believing you deserve more. You were standing right there at the edge. The question isn't whether the threshold exists. The question is, what's keeping you from crossing it? This is where the hidden truth reveals itself, and it might make you uncomfortable at first. There's an ancient principle that speaks of a mirror, not one that shows your physical reflection, but one that reveals something far more important, your deepest, most honest belief about money and wealth. If you were to stand in front of this mirror right now, it wouldn't show you what you tell others, or even what you consciously think you believe. It would show you the truth that lives in the quietest part of your mind, the part that operates behind the scenes of your conscious awareness. If you're serious about continuing this journey into deeper levels of wealth consciousness, subscribe to this channel. This isn't surface-level content, it's transformational work for people who are genuinely ready to shift their reality. Some people look into this metaphorical mirror and see brightness, a clear reflection that says, "I am worthy, I am capable, abundance flows through me naturally." Others see shadows, dark patches of doubt, inherited beliefs from childhood, moments when they were told they weren't enough, or that wanting more was somehow wrong. And then there are those who look and see nothing at all, a blank space where their relationship with wealth should be, as if they've been so disconnected from the concept of abundance that they can't even form a clear image of it. Has this ever happened to you? You set an intention to create more wealth. You start taking action. Things begin to move in the right direction, and then suddenly, almost as if triggered by your own progress, you sabotage yourself. You make a decision that doesn't align with your goals. You pull back just when momentum is building, or you find yourself creating problems that didn't exist before. This isn't weakness, and it's not bad luck. This is your internal mirror showing you exactly what you believe you deserve. Your external reality is always a reflection of your internal vibration. The transformation that's possible when you truly understand this goes beyond anything traditional success advice can offer. We're not talking about working harder or finding better strategies. We're talking about a fundamental shift in how you perceive yourself in relation to wealth. Because here's the revelation that changes everything. The threshold you've been standing at, the one that feels so solid and unmovable, isn't actually a wall. It's more like a film of belief, a thin membrane that exists only because you haven't questioned whether it's real. Now, I want to go even deeper into this, because what I'm about to share with you reveals the exact mechanism behind why some people cross this threshold effortlessly, while others remain stuck for decades. The impact of understanding this single principle cannot be overstated. Your relationship with money isn't determined by your circumstances, your background, or even your current financial situation. It's determined by the reflection you see in that internal mirror, and more importantly, by whether you're willing to change what that reflection shows. Write in the comments, "I see my reflection clearly now," because acknowledging what you truly see is the first step toward transformation. The moment you begin to see that reflection clearly, something remarkable starts to happen inside you. It's subtle at first, like the faintest vibration you might feel when you place your hand on a speaker. This is the beginning of what I call magnetic alignment, and it's the hidden mechanism behind every genuine transformation in wealth consciousness. You see, true abundance doesn't originate from external opportunities, brilliant strategies, or even hard work. It begins with an invisible adjustment that happens deep within your internal frequency, a recalibration that most people never even know is possible. Think of yourself as a living magnet right now, not metaphorically, but as an actual energetic force that's constantly broadcasting a signal out into the world. Every single thought you have carries a specific metallic quality. Some thoughts are heavy like iron, weighing you down with doubt and limitation. Other thoughts are light like aluminum, allowing movement but lacking real power. And then there are thoughts that carry the resonance of gold, thoughts that vibrate at the exact frequency where wealth naturally flows. The question is, what kind of thoughts have you been broadcasting most consistently? Here's where this gets really fascinating, and you'll probably recognize this pattern immediately in your own life. Every emotion you experience creates what we might call a magnetic field around you. When you feel fear about money, you generate a field that repels opportunities, even when you're desperately trying to attract them. When you feel scarcity, believing there's never enough, you create a field that confirms that exact reality back to you. But when you genuinely feel abundance, not fake positivity, but real cellular level certainty that you're supported and worthy, your magnetic field shifts completely. Opportunities that were always there suddenly become visible. People start responding to you differently. Doors open with far less effort. And your actions, they're the amplifier. Every decision you make either increases or decreases your attractive force. This is why you see people who seem to push wealth away despite working incredibly hard. They're taking action, yes, but their thoughts are heavy metal and their emotions are generating fields of scarcity. The actions become almost irrelevant because the underlying frequency is misaligned. Meanwhile, there are others who attract wealth so effortlessly it almost seems unfair. They're not necessarily working harder or smarter. They've simply aligned their internal frequency with the natural flow of abundance. Think of a river for a moment. Water doesn't struggle to find its path. It doesn't force itself downhill or question whether it deserves to reach the ocean. It simply flows according to the natural course that's already there. Some people move through life like that river, finding the path of least resistance toward wealth because their entire being is aligned with that flow. Others are like water trying to run uphill, fighting against the natural current with every decision, exhausted and wondering why nothing works. The revelation here is profound. You're not broken, you're not cursed, and you're not missing some secret knowledge that only the wealthy possess. You're simply broadcasting on the wrong frequency, and the beautiful thing about frequencies is that they can be adjusted. The impact of understanding this cannot be measured in dollars alone. It changes your entire relationship with how life works. When you realize that your thoughts are creating actual magnetic properties, that your emotions are generating real fields of attraction or repulsion, and that your actions are either amplifying or diminishing that power, you suddenly have access to a level of control you never knew existed. This is the behind-the-scenes truth that wealth doesn't advertise. The journey from scarcity to abundance isn't about grinding harder or finding better opportunities. It's about making that invisible internal adjustment, aligning your frequency so precisely that what you desire begins moving toward you with the same inevitability as water flowing downhill. And the moment that alignment happens, you'll feel it, not as a thought, but as a knowing that settles into your bones. Drop a comment saying, "I'm aligning my frequency now," because the act of declaring it begins the recalibration process. Once you understand that your frequency can be adjusted, that your magnetic field can be realigned, the natural question arises, what's been keeping you misaligned all this time? And this is where most people hesitate, because the answer requires something that feels almost dangerous in its honesty. Before you can move forward into genuine abundance, you have to do what very few people ever dare to do. You have to look at yourself without any masks, without any excuses, without the comfortable stories you've been telling yourself about why things are the way they are. This isn't about judgment or criticism, it's about truth. There's a version of you that you show the world, the person who has goals and dreams and works hard. Then there's the version of you that exists in those quiet moments alone, the one who whispers doubts when no one else can hear. And beneath even that, there's the deepest version, the one standing in front of that mirror we talked about earlier, seeing the absolute truth about your relationship with prosperity. That's the version we need to acknowledge right now, because transformation cannot happen on the surface. It only happens when you're willing to see what's really there. Here's what most people discover when they finally look without flinching. There's a shadow, not something evil or wrong, but something ancient, something that's been there so long you stopped noticing it. This shadow wasn't created by you, it was inherited, piece by piece, moment by moment, through thousands of tiny interactions throughout your childhood and beyond. You absorb beliefs about money and worthiness that were never actually yours. When your parents said, "Money doesn't grow on trees," that became a brick in your shadow. When society told you that wanting more was greedy, that became another layer. When you watched people struggle and associated wealth with difficulty, that reinforced the structure. Every message you received about not being enough, every moment you felt overlooked or undervalued, every time someone suggested that prosperity was for other people but not for you, all of it accumulated into this ancient shadow that follows you everywhere. And the insidious thing about this shadow is that it operates completely behind the scenes. You're not consciously thinking, "I don't deserve abundance." You're just mysteriously finding yourself making decisions that confirm that belief. You're somehow always choosing the path that keeps you exactly where you've always been. The impact of this shadow on your life cannot be overstated. It's the reason you hesitate when you should act. It's why you downplay your achievements and undercharge for your services. It's the voice that says, "Who am I to want this?" Whenever you dare to imagine something greater, this shadow has been the invisible architect of your limitations, designing your life from the background while you believed you were making free choices. And the most profound revelation, it's not even your shadow. You've been living according to programming that was installed before you were old enough to question it. If this video shifted something in you, hit the like button. It's a small action, but it sends a signal, both to the algorithm and to your own consciousness, that you're aligning with this frequency of abundance. Think about the decisions you've made around money in the past year. How many of them came from genuine desire and worthiness, and how many came from fear, unworthiness, or the belief that you had to settle? That ratio tells you exactly how much influence this ancient shadow still has over your life. But here's where the journey becomes truly transformative. Once you see the shadow clearly, once you recognize it for what it is, its power begins to diminish. Not because you fight it or try to destroy it, but because awareness itself is the antidote to unconscious programming. The moment you can look at that shadow and say, "This isn't mine, this was given to me and I'm choosing to release it," something shifts at the deepest level of your being. The mirror begins to show a different reflection. The frequency starts to change. The magnetic field realigns, because you can't transform what you refuse to see, and you can't release what you won't acknowledge. This confrontation with your shadow isn't the end of the journey. It's the gateway to everything that comes next. Write in the comments, "I see my shadow and I'm ready to release." Because naming it is the first act of freedom. The profound thing about this shadow of unworthiness is how it operates in your life. Imagine walking through a dark cave with a torch in your hand. As you move forward, the light illuminates what's in front of you, but it also creates a shadow that follows behind. No matter how fast you walk or which direction you turn, that shadow moves with you. It never leaves because it's intrinsically connected to the source of light itself. This is exactly how the belief, "I don't deserve," functions in your consciousness. It's not a separate entity you can fight or push away. It's a distortion created by the very light of your awareness when it hasn't fully illuminated your worthiness. People spend years trying to battle this shadow, using willpower and affirmations like weapons, declaring, "I am worthy, I am abundant," while the shadow remains untouched in the background. And here's why that approach rarely works. You cannot eliminate a shadow by fighting it. The harder you push against it, the more resistance you create, and resistance only strengthens what you're resisting. The shadow doesn't need to be destroyed, it needs to be illuminated. When you bring conscious awareness to the belief of unworthiness, when you shine light directly into it instead of trying to pretend it doesn't exist, something remarkable happens. The shadow doesn't disappear instantly, but it begins to shrink, to lose its grip, to become less solid. But illumination requires precision. You can't just vaguely acknowledge, yes, I have some unworthiness issues, and expect transformation. You have to locate exactly where this shadow lives inside you, and this is where the journey becomes deeply personal and visceral. Close your eyes for a moment if you can, or simply bring your awareness inward right now. Take a slow breath and ask yourself, where do I feel the sensation of unworthiness in my body? Not as a concept, but as an actual physical sensation. For some people it lives in the chest, a tightness, a heaviness, almost like a weight pressing down whenever they think about asking for more money or stepping into greater visibility. For others, it sits in the stomach, that familiar knot of anxiety that appears when opportunities present themselves, the gut-level response that says, "This isn't safe, retreat." And for many it lodges in the throat, creating that choking sensation when they want to speak up, ask for what they deserve, or express their true value. Wherever you feel it, that's where your shadow has been hiding. And here's the revelation that changes everything. Where your shadow hides is also exactly where your power resides, waiting to be reclaimed. Think about that for a moment. The very place in your body where you feel the most constriction, the most limitation, the most doubt, that's not a weakness. That's a locked door to your greatest strength. Your power didn't disappear. It simply got buried beneath layers of programming and conditioning. It's been waiting there all this time, patient and persistent, for you to finally pay attention. The tightness in your chest isn't just anxiety about money, it's your suppressed confidence trying to emerge. The knot in your stomach isn't just fear of success, it's your intuitive wisdom that's been ignored for too long. The constriction in your throat isn't just difficulty speaking your worth, it's your authentic voice demanding to be heard. The impact of this understanding shifts everything about how you approach transformation. Instead of trying to fix yourself or overcome your limitations, you begin to recognize that the journey is about excavation, about carefully removing the layers that have covered your inherent power. Every time you bring awareness to where the shadow lives, every time you breathe into that space instead of contracting away from it, you're literally changing the energy structure of your relationship with abundance. The shadow begins to dissolve, not through force, but through presence. This is the hidden truth behind every genuine breakthrough. It happens not when you become someone different, but when you remove what was never actually you in the first place. The decisions you make from this awareness carry a completely different quality. They come from power rather than compensation, from worthiness rather than proving, from alignment rather than force. Put in the comments, "I'm reclaiming my power now," because acknowledgement is the first beam of light that begins the illumination. As you begin reclaiming this power, as you start bringing light to the shadows that have been running your life from behind the scenes, you'll inevitably encounter something that stops most people dead in their tracks. It's one of the most powerful, invisible forces keeping people locked in financial limitation. And the devastating part is that most people never even realize it exists. I'm talking about the silent agreement. The contract you never consciously signed but have been honoring your entire life. The unspoken rule that says you cannot surpass your family. Let me ask you something deeply personal. Have you ever noticed yourself pulling back just when you're about to break through to the next level? You're building momentum, things are finally working, opportunities are opening up, and then suddenly you make a decision that doesn't make sense. You sabotage yourself in a way that seems almost deliberate, even though you can't explain why. Or perhaps you felt a strange guilt when imagining yourself having more than your parents ever had, living a lifestyle beyond what your siblings could afford, or achieving success that would make you visibly different from everyone you grew up with. This isn't coincidence, and it's not weakness. It's an invisible emotional rope tied around your potential, pulling you back toward familiar territory every time you attempt to rise. The agreement operates on such a subtle level that you might not even recognize it as you're living it. You tell yourself you're being realistic, responsible, or humble, but what's really happening is that you're unconsciously protecting yourself from the discomfort of outgrowing your origins. Because here's the hidden truth that nobody talks about. There's a deep primal part of you that equates success beyond your family's level with betrayal, abandonment, or separation from your tribe. Think about the implicit messages you absorbed growing up. Maybe your parents struggled financially and you watched them sacrifice everything. So now a part of you believes that having it easier than they did would somehow dishonor their struggle. Maybe you grew up in a community where wealth was viewed with suspicion, where people who got too big for their britches were criticized or ostracized. Maybe you witnessed someone in your family achieve success only to become disconnected from everyone else, and you internalized the belief that prosperity equals loneliness. All of these experiences created an agreement that you would stay within certain boundaries, that you would remain at a level where everyone else still feels comfortable around you. But here's what you need to understand with absolute clarity. That contract was never yours. It was inherited, installed into your consciousness like software you didn't choose to download. It's been running in the background of every financial decision you've made, like a broken compass that keeps you walking in circles no matter how hard you try to move forward. The impact of this inherited agreement on your life is massive. It's probably the single biggest factor limiting your wealth right now, more than your skills, your opportunities, or your effort. And the most liberating revelation, true loyalty to your family, to your roots, to where you came from. It isn't about repeating their limitations. Real loyalty is about expansion. It's about honoring everything they gave you by building on it, by taking their foundation and creating something even greater. When you hold yourself back to avoid making others uncomfortable, you're not being loyal, you're being small. When you dim your light so no one else feels overshadowed, you're not showing love, you're perpetuating limitation across generations. Think about it this way. If you have children or ever plan to, would you want them to limit their success to match yours? Would you want them to stay small so you wouldn't feel left behind? Of course not. You'd want them to soar beyond anything you ever achieved. That's the natural order of growth, of evolution, of genuine progress. Your ancestors, if they could speak to you now, wouldn't want you trapped by their limitations. They'd want you to break through them, to create the life they couldn't, to prove that their struggles meant something by using them as a foundation rather than a ceiling. Leave a comment saying, "I'm breaking free from inherited limits," because declaring it out loud is how you begin dissolving contracts that were never yours to keep. Once you recognize that these inherited contracts aren't yours to keep, once you give yourself permission to expand beyond the invisible boundaries that were set for you, something crucial needs to happen next. And this is where many people stumble without realizing it. They break free from old agreements, they shift their mindset, they start taking action toward greater abundance, but nothing seems to move. The opportunities don't come, the money doesn't flow, and they end up frustrated, wondering what they're doing wrong. The answer lies in a principle that's been understood by mystics and masters for thousands of years, but rarely talked about in modern success culture: the law of sacred space. Here's the simple truth that most people overlook. Nothing new can enter a container that's already full. Think about trying to pour fresh water into a glass that's already filled to the brim with murky liquid. It doesn't matter how pure the new water is or how much of it you have available. Until you empty out what's already there, there's simply no room for anything new to enter. Your life, your energy field, your consciousness, they all operate exactly like that glass. And right now, if you're honest with yourself, you're probably holding on to things that are taking up the exact space where abundance is trying to manifest. I'm talking about the resentments you're still carrying from past betrayals or disappointments, the guilt you feel about previous failures or mistakes with money, the fears that have become so familiar they feel like part of your identity, fear of loss, fear of judgment, fear of success itself. The old stories you keep replaying about why things didn't work out, who wronged you, or what you should have done differently. Every single one of these things occupies energetic space, and as long as they're there, wealth cannot fully enter your reality. It's not that you don't deserve abundance, or that it isn't available. It's that there's literally no room for it. This revelation tends to make people uncomfortable because it requires radical honesty. You have to look at your internal landscape and identify what you're holding on to that no longer serves you. Maybe it's the relationship that drains your energy, but you keep maintaining out of obligation. Maybe it's the job you've outgrown but haven't left because it feels safe. Maybe it's the identity you constructed around being the person who struggles, who overcomes obstacles, who never quite catches a break. These things become familiar, almost comfortable in their discomfort, and releasing them feels like losing part of yourself. But think about what happens when you try to fill a glass of turbid, cloudy water with crystal clear water without emptying it first. The two mix together, and you end up with slightly less murky water, but never the clarity you actually want. This is why partial transformation doesn't work. Why trying to add abundance on top of scarcity consciousness just creates confusion. You have to be willing to empty the glass, to create genuine space, to let go of what's been filling you up, even if it's all you've known. The impact of understanding this principle cannot be overstated because it shifts your entire approach to manifestation and wealth creation. Instead of constantly trying to add more affirmations, more strategies, more effort, you start asking a different question. What needs to be removed? What am I holding on to that's blocking the natural flow? Where am I cluttered with old energy, outdated beliefs, or toxic patterns that are occupying the space where my next level should be living? Sometimes the thing taking up space isn't even negative in an obvious way. It might be a good opportunity that's simply not great, a comfortable situation that's preventing an extraordinary one, or a version of success that's smaller than what you're actually capable of. Sacred space isn't just about removing the bad, it's about being willing to release the good in order to make room for the exceptional. And that requires a level of trust that most people never develop. The trust that when you create space with intention, something better will fill it. Type in the comments, "I'm creating sacred space for my abundance," because the act of declaring it begins the process of release. When you begin creating that sacred space, when you start releasing what no longer belongs in your energetic container, you'll notice something profound happening. The energy that was trapped, stagnant, locked in old patterns, it begins to move. And this movement reveals one of the most powerful truths about how wealth actually operates in your life. Abundance isn't a stagnant lake where water sits still, accumulating and growing heavy. Abundance is a river, a continuous flow of energy that moves through you, around you, and beyond you. And the moment you understand this, your entire relationship with money transforms. Think about an actual river for a moment. Water doesn't question whether it deserves to flow. It doesn't worry about whether there will be enough downstream. It doesn't hold back portions for fear of running dry. A river simply moves, following the natural course carved into the landscape, expanding when the channel widens and narrowing when it needs to, but always, always flowing. Your financial energy operates on exactly the same principle. It's designed to move, to circulate, to flow through your life and out into the world and back again in an endless cycle. The problem is that most people treat money like a lake, something to hoard, protect, and keep still out of fear that movement equals loss. But here's where the hidden truth emerges, and you'll probably recognize this pattern immediately in your own experience. Every time you give with fear, you're literally placing a boulder in your river. The energy can't flow naturally because you're constricting it at the source, sending it out with the vibration of, I don't have enough, I might regret this. What if I need it later? That fearful giving doesn't create the flow that brings abundance back. It creates resistance. The same thing happens when you share with resentment, when you help someone or contribute to something, but internally you're bitter about it, feeling used or unappreciated. That doesn't keep the river clean and clear. It muddies the water, contaminating the flow with toxic energy that ultimately circles back to you. And then there's receiving with guilt, which might be the most insidious block of all. Someone pays you more than you expected. An opportunity brings unexpected abundance. A gift arrives that feels too generous, and instead of accepting it with grace and gratitude, you feel uncomfortable, undeserving, almost embarrassed. That guilt is like a dam in your river, telling the universe, I'm not ready for this much, please reduce the flow. I don't trust myself with abundance. And the universe, always responding to your energetic signals, obliges by slowing down what's trying to reach you. The revelation here is that wealth consciousness isn't about accumulation. It's about circulation. It's about developing the trust to let money move through your life the way a river moves through landscape, knowing with absolute certainty that the flow doesn't stop. When you give from a place of genuine abundance, not from fear or obligation, but from the overflow of what you already feel inside, you're strengthening the current. When you receive with openness and worthiness, allowing yourself to accept what's being offered without guilt or suspicion, you're widening the channel. And when you allow money to move, investing in yourself, supporting others, experiencing life, creating opportunities, you're maintaining the natural momentum that keeps the river flowing. This is why you see people who seem to have money constantly moving through their lives. They're not necessarily making more than you or starting with more advantages. They've simply learned to work with the principle of flow rather than fighting against it. They trust the river. They don't grip every dollar with white knuckles, terrified of letting it go. They understand that money held too tightly becomes stagnant, but money released with intention creates current, and that current brings even more abundance. Downstream. The impact of shifting from a lake mentality to a river mentality is immediate and profound. Suddenly, you're not constantly calculating and worrying about having enough, because you recognize that enough is always flowing toward you as long as you keep the channel clear. The decisions you make come from a completely different place, not from scarcity and protection, but from trust and expansion. Write in the comments, I trust the flow of abundance, because trust is what opens the floodgates. As you start trusting that flow, as you allow abundance to move through your life with less resistance and more grace, you'll inevitably approach a threshold. It's that invisible line we talked about at the beginning, but now you're closer to it than ever before. You can feel it. There's an expansion happening inside you, a readiness that wasn't there before. And right at that moment, right when you're about to cross into your next level of financial reality, something appears. Ancient teachings call it the guardian at the threshold, and understanding what this really is will determine whether you break through or turn back like most people do. Here's what you need to know. This guardian isn't some external force. It's not a spirit blocking your path or an enemy trying to keep you down. The guardian is you, or more precisely, it's the version of you that you used to be, the past self that's terrified of what happens if you actually succeed. Think about it. Every identity you've ever held, every version of yourself that felt safe in smaller circumstances, every part of you that learned to survive by staying small, all of that coalesces into this invisible presence that stands between you and your expansion. And its job isn't to stop you permanently. Its job is to test whether you're genuinely ready for what comes next. This is why breakthrough moments often feel so uncomfortable, why you experience the most resistance right before the biggest shifts. The guardian shows up and does what it's designed to do. It reminds you of every past failure, every time you tried and fell short, every moment you felt foolish for wanting more. It whispers all your deepest doubts with perfect precision because it knows exactly which buttons to push. It shows you your limits, not as facts but as warnings, saying, "Remember what happened last time? Remember how that felt? Are you sure you want to risk that again?" Most people encounter this guardian and interpret it as a sign to stop, as evidence that they're not ready or that the path forward is wrong. They feel the fear, hear the doubts, see the memories of past failures, and they retreat. They tell themselves they'll try again later when they're more prepared, when the timing is better, when they feel more confident. But that moment never comes because the guardian will always be there, performing exactly the same function, asking exactly the same question. Are you truly ready to become someone new? But here's the revelation that changes everything, the hidden truth that separates those who break through from those who stay stuck forever. The guardian isn't actually blocking you, it's verifying you. It's checking to see if your commitment to expansion is stronger than your attachment to familiar limitation. Think of it like a password protection system. The guardian presents the challenge, and your response determines whether the door opens. When you react with fear and retreat, the guardian remains in place, solid and unmovable. But when you acknowledge the fear, recognize the past version of yourself that's speaking, and choose to move forward anyway, that's when something shifts. The impact of understanding this cannot be overstated. Suddenly, every moment of resistance, every wave of doubt, every memory of past failure that surfaces right when you're about to level up, none of it means you're on the wrong path. It means you're on exactly the right path, and you've reached the verification point. The guardian is doing its job, and now you need to do yours. You need to look at that past version of yourself with compassion, acknowledge that it kept you safe when you needed safety, and then gently but firmly declare that safety is no longer your primary goal. Growth is, expansion is, becoming who you're meant to be is. This is the moment where most transformations either happen or collapse, where the journey either continues into breakthrough territory or circles back to familiar ground. The guardian only steps aside when it recognizes that you've genuinely changed, that you're no longer the person who needs its protection, and the only way it can recognize that is through your willingness to face it directly, to feel the fear without letting the fear make your decisions. Leave a comment, "I see the guardian and I'm walking through," because naming your readiness is how you signal that you've passed the test. When you walk past the guardian, when you choose expansion over safety, something extraordinary happens in the fabric of your reality. You enter a space where decisions stop being simple choices and become something far more powerful. They become echoes. And I'm not speaking metaphorically here. There are moments in life when a decision you make reverberates both forward and backward through time, reshaping not just your future, but actually healing aspects of your past that you lived through without fully understanding. This is one of those moments, and recognizing it for what it is changes everything about how you move forward. Think about the decisions you've made around money and abundance up until now. Most of them were probably what I call half decisions, the kind where you say yes with your words, but your energy is still negotiating, still keeping one foot in the old reality, just in case this doesn't work out. Half decisions don't create echoes. They create static, a kind of energetic noise that confuses the universe about what you actually want. But a true decision, a complete decision, where every part of you aligns behind a single intention, that creates an echo so powerful it literally reorganizes the circumstances around you. Imagine yourself standing in the center of a vast valley covered in golden mist. This valley represents the field of all possibilities, the quantum space where your potential realities exist before they manifest. Every thought you have about your financial dreams sends a vibration out into this valley, and the valley responds. When you think about abundance with fear, the echo disperses immediately, scattering in 1,000 different directions with no coherent pattern. The valley hears confusion and returns confusion. When you think about wealth with doubt, questioning whether it's really possible for you, the echo fades before it can even travel very far. The valley hears weakness and returns silence. But something entirely different happens when you make a declaration from your core, when you affirm with every cell in your body, this is for me, this is mine, this is my reality now. That kind of certainty creates an echo that doesn't scatter or fade. It amplifies. The valley responds like it's been waiting for exactly this frequency, like it recognizes the voice of someone who has finally stopped negotiating with their own worthiness. The golden mist begins to move, patterns start forming, and what was previously invisible or impossible suddenly becomes clear and available. This is the hidden truth about manifestation that most people miss entirely. They think it's about repeating affirmations or visualizing outcomes, but those techniques only work when they're backed by the energetic signature of a true decision. The universe doesn't respond to your words or even your desires. It responds to your decisions, to the moments when you stop considering options and start claiming your reality. And here's what makes this so profound. A real decision doesn't just affect your future. It sends ripples backward through your timeline, recontextualizing every failure, every setback, every moment you thought you weren't enough. Suddenly, those past experiences stop being evidence of your limitations and become preparation for this moment. The jobs you lost were clearing space. The opportunities that fell through were redirecting you. The times you felt stuck were building the pressure that's about to launch you forward. When you make a true decision, when you create that powerful echo in the valley, your entire story reorganizes itself around this new trajectory. What felt like random chaos reveals itself as perfect orchestration. The impact of understanding this transforms how you approach every financial decision from this point forward. You stop making choices from a place of, let me try this and see if it works. You start making choices from a place of, this is happening, and I'm aligning everything in my life to support it. That shift in energy, that movement from tentative to certain, is what the valley has been waiting to hear. It's what activates the echo that carries far enough to actually reshape your reality. Type in the comments, I make this decision completely, because a declaration without reservation is what sets the echo in motion. Once that echo starts moving through the valley, once you've sent out the signal of a true decision, you might expect everything to shift immediately. But here's where most people stumble, where the journey gets derailed even after they've come this far. They make what feels like a decision, they declare their intention, but part of them is still hedging, still keeping a backup plan, still maintaining one foot in the old reality just in case. And that divided energy, that internal split between the part of you that wants to move forward and the part that wants to stay safe. It weakens everything. Wealth doesn't arrive when you desire it. Wealth doesn't even arrive when you work hard for it. Wealth arrives when you decide completely, when there's no negotiation left inside you, when you've burned the bridges behind you and there's only one direction available: forward. Think about the most significant transformations you've witnessed in your own life or in others. They never happened through half measures or tentative steps. They happened when someone reached a point where going back was no longer an option, where the decision became so total that their entire internal posture shifted. This is what changes your energetic signature from "I want this" to "this is already mine." When you make a complete decision, your body knows it, your energy field knows it, and the universe absolutely knows it. There's a solidity to complete decisions that incomplete ones simply cannot replicate. It's the difference between saying, "I'm going to try to build a business," and "I am a business owner now," regardless of current circumstances. One is a wish, the other is an identity. Declaration. And identity declarations carry weight that wishes never will. But even after you've made that complete decision, even after you've aligned your energy and burned those bridges, there's still one more key required to unlock the doors you're approaching. And this key is so subtle, so internal, that most people search for it their entire lives without realizing it's been in their possession all along. I'm talking about the frequency of worthiness, the internal vibration that either grants you access or keeps you locked out, no matter how hard you try to force your way through. Here's the revelation that most success teachings completely miss. Doors to greater abundance don't open with force, strategy, or even effort. They open with a single internal vibration, the unshakable knowing that you deserve what's on the other side. And the universe, this intelligent field of possibility we've been talking about, doesn't respond to your words about worthiness. It doesn't care how many times you repeat, "I am worthy" in the mirror. It responds to your actual frequency, to what you genuinely believe in the quietest moments when no one else is watching, to the truth that lives beneath all your affirmations and declarations. Think about this carefully, because it explains why some people seem to effortlessly attract opportunities while others struggle despite having more talent, more knowledge, more effort. The difference isn't in what they're doing, it's in what they're being. It's in the subtle, energetic signature they're broadcasting every moment of every day. When someone truly feels worthy at a cellular level, not as a practice belief but as an unquestioned truth, they emit a frequency that opens doors automatically. They don't have to prove themselves, convince anyone, or force opportunities. The opportunities recognize the frequency and respond accordingly. But when there's even a trace of unworthiness operating in the background, that subtle feeling that you're not quite ready, not quite deserving, not quite enough, it creates static in your frequency. The doors sense that static and remain closed, not because they're judging you, but because the mechanism simply doesn't recognize the signal. It's like having the right key, but it's slightly bent so it won't turn the lock no matter how hard you try. The issue isn't the door or the lock, it's the alignment between your internal frequency and what you're trying to access. The impact of this understanding shifts your entire approach to creating wealth. Instead of constantly trying to do more, prove more, or become more, you start focusing on the one thing that actually matters, calibrating your internal frequency to match the reality you're calling in. Write in the comments, "I am worthy of everything I desire," because claiming it publicly strengthens the frequency you're broadcasting. As you focus on calibrating that frequency of worthiness, as you start tuning into what you genuinely believe you deserve rather than what you tell yourself you should believe, imagine for a moment that you're standing in an ancient chamber. The walls are weathered stone, the air carries the weight of centuries, and in the center of this space, suspended in absolute stillness, floats a golden key. It's not hanging from anything, not supported by anything visible. It simply exists there, waiting. This key represents your worthiness, but not the performative kind you show to others, not the version you present. On social media or in conversations, when you're trying to convince people of your value, this key reflects the worthiness you confess only in silence, in those moments of brutal honesty when it's just you and the truth. That distinction is everything. True deservingness isn't arrogance or ego or the loud proclamation that you're better than anyone else. It's something far quieter and infinitely more powerful. It's recognition. It's the calm, unshakable knowing that you belong in the rooms you want to enter, that you're worthy of the abundance you're calling in, that your desires aren't random or selfish, but aligned with who you actually are at the deepest level. When you reach out toward that floating key in your mind's eye, does it move toward you or does it pull away? That response tells you everything about where your frequency currently sits. Most people spend their entire lives reaching for keys that exist outside themselves, convinced that worthiness is something earned through achievement, validation, or external proof. They think, when I have this much money, then I'll feel worthy, or when I accomplish this goal, then I'll deserve more. But the mechanism works in reverse. The worthiness has to come first. The internal recognition has to be solidified before the external reality can match it. This is why you see people who achieve enormous success but still feel empty, still feel like imposters, still can't shake the sense that they don't truly deserve what they've created. They reach the external manifestation without ever claiming the internal key. Now, I want to go even deeper into this, because there's an ancient teaching that reveals where this key actually lives, where your worthiness has always been waiting to be discovered. There's a myth that's been told across cultures for thousands of years about a treasure hidden beneath the earth. Most people hear this story and immediately start planning expeditions to distant mountains, exotic islands, or hidden temples. They assume the treasure must be somewhere far away, somewhere difficult to reach, somewhere that requires a grand journey to access. But the teaching has always contained a reversal, a twist that only the wise recognize. The treasure isn't in distant lands. It's buried beneath the seeker's own feet. He who seeks outside gets lost. He who digs within finds. Those words contain the entire secret to unlocking abundance, but they're almost impossible to truly hear when you're in the mindset of searching externally. Your greatest wealth, the treasure that unlocks everything else, isn't hidden in strategies or opportunities or connections or lucky breaks. It's buried in your own identity, in the depths of who you believe yourself to be when nobody's watching, in the self-concept that runs quietly beneath every decision you make. And here's the profound truth that changes everything. You can't receive more than what you believe you are, not what you want to be, not what you're trying to become, what you genuinely, deeply believe you are right now. Your bank account is a mirror of your self-definition. Your opportunities reflect your self-concept. Your reality organizes itself around the character you've been unconsciously playing without even realizing it's a role. When you change your being, when you excavate that treasure buried within and finally claim it as yours, the external world has no choice but to reorganize around this new internal truth. This is why all the external strategies and tactics feel like pushing water uphill when your internal identity hasn't shifted. You're trying to create a reality that your self-concept won't allow. The impact of this revelation is staggering because it means you've been standing on top of everything you've been searching for. The treasure was never missing. It was just buried under layers of conditioning, inherited beliefs, and identities that were never truly yours to begin with. Leave a comment. The treasure is within me, because acknowledging where it lives is the first step of excavation. When you recognize that the treasure is within you, When you truly understand that everything you've been searching for externally is actually buried beneath layers of conditioning and false identity, the next question becomes obvious. How do you excavate it? How do you dig through decades of accumulated programming to reach what's actually yours? The answer is both simple and profound. You hold a shovel made of light, and you've been holding it this entire time without realizing what it was for. This isn't a physical tool, it's your conscious awareness, your willingness to look beneath the surface, your courage to question the identity you've been living from. Every time you bring awareness to a limiting belief, you're taking a shovelful of dirt away from the treasure. Every time you question whether a fear is actually yours or something you inherited, you're cutting through another layer. Every time you catch yourself operating from an old habit that no longer serves you and choose differently, you're digging deeper. This process isn't always comfortable. Excavation rarely is. You're going to hit layers of accumulated doubt, sections of old pain, pockets of fear that have been compressed under the weight of years. But beneath all of that, underneath every layer you remove, the treasure remains exactly where it's always been, waiting for you to finally claim it. And here's what most people don't understand about this excavation process. Your greatest wealth isn't some abstract concept or spiritual idea buried within. Your greatest wealth is literally your identity, your self-image, the fundamental understanding of who you are and what you're capable of receiving. This is the treasure. This is what's been hidden. Not money itself, but the identity of someone for whom wealth flows naturally. Someone who doesn't question their deservingness. Someone who operates from abundance rather than scarcity. When you uncover that identity, when you excavate it from beneath all the false layers, everything in your external reality begins to shift because it has to. Your reality is always organizing itself around your self-image. Think about how a mold works. You pour liquid metal or plaster or chocolate into a specific shape, and when it hardens, it takes on exactly the form of that mold. Your self-image functions as the invisible mold where your financial reality gets printed, shaped, and solidified. Wealth doesn't arrive when you change your actions, when you learn new strategies, or when you work harder. Wealth arrives when you change the mold, when you fundamentally shift how you see yourself and what you believe is natural and normal for someone like you to experience. If your self-image is shaped like someone who struggles, who barely gets by, who always encounters obstacles, that's the exact reality that will keep printing, no matter how hard you work or how good your opportunities are. But the moment you change that mold, the moment you start seeing yourself as someone for whom abundance is natural, someone who deserves prosperity, someone who navigates wealth with ease and confidence, that new reality starts printing immediately. The universe doesn't argue with your self-image, it simply reflects it back to you with stunning precision. This is why you can give the exact same opportunity to two different people and get completely different results. It's not about the opportunity, it's about the mold that person is operating from, the self-image that's shaping their reality behind the scenes. The impact of understanding this transforms your entire approach to wealth creation. You stop obsessing over tactics and strategies and start asking the only question that actually matters. Who am I being right now? And is that identity capable of receiving what I'm asking for? If the answer is no, if there's a mismatch between your desire and your identity, no amount of action will bridge that gap. But when you change the mold, when you excavate that true identity that's been buried and start operating from it, the actions you need to take become obvious, the opportunities start appearing naturally, and the wealth flows because it's finally encountering a mold that's shaped to receive it. Drop a comment saying, "I'm changing my mold now," because declaring the shift is how you begin reshaping the identity that creates your reality. As you begin reshaping that mold, as you excavate the identity that's been buried and start operating from your true self-image, something remarkable starts happening. You'll notice a shift in your presence, in how you move through the world, in the energy you carry into rooms. And this shift reveals one of the most misunderstood aspects of genuine wealth consciousness, the nature of real power. There's a type of power that most people chase their entire lives, the kind that announces itself loudly, that needs validation and recognition, that constantly proves and performs. But that's not the power that transforms reality. That's not the power that attracts authentic abundance. The power I'm talking about doesn't shout, doesn't boast, doesn't need anyone to notice it. This power radiates. It changes everything around it without making noise, transforms reality without needing to convince anyone of anything, and appears naturally when you finally remember who you actually are. Beneath all the conditioning, think about the people you've encountered who carry this quality. They don't have to tell you they're successful. You can feel it. They don't have to prove their worth. It emanates from them. They've tapped into something that operates on a completely different frequency than the loud, aggressive energy most people associate with power. This silent power is what emerges when your internal and external selves align perfectly, when there's no more gap between who you are in private and who you show the world, when you've stopped performing and started simply being. And the foundation of this power, the source from which it radiates, can be understood through a simple but profound image. Picture yourself entering a circular chamber made of ancient stone, walls that have stood for centuries, holding secrets that few have discovered. At the center of this chamber burns a flame, but not the red-orange fire you're familiar with. This flame is intense blue, almost electric in its purity, radiating a light that seems to come from beyond the physical realm. That blue flame is you in your purest state, before society told you who to be, before fear taught you to dim yourself, before scarcity convinced you to play small. It's the essence of who you are, when all the masks are removed, when all the conditioning is stripped away, when nothing stands between you and your fundamental nature. And here's the tragedy that plays out in millions of lives every single day. Most people live their entire existence dimmed, operating at a fraction of their actual radiance, never even knowing that this flame exists within them because they've never stopped long enough to feed it, to acknowledge it, to let it grow. The internal fire of abundance, this blue flame of your truest self, doesn't ignite with money or success or external validation. It ignites with identity, with purpose, with the decision to stop abandoning yourself in favor of what others expect. Every time you doubt your worth, the flame shrinks. Every time you compare yourself to others, it grows colder. Every time you betray what you know is true about yourself in order to fit in or stay safe, the flame dims almost to nothing. But every single time you choose from your authentic power, every time you honor what you genuinely want instead of what you think you should want, every time you speak your truth even when it's uncomfortable, the flame grows. This is the hidden mechanism behind genuine magnetism, behind the quality that makes some people naturally attractive to opportunities, wealth, and success. They're not performing magnetism. They're radiating it from a flame that's been fed consistently, that burns bright because they've stopped starving it with doubt and fear. The impact of understanding this shifts your entire relationship with personal power. You stop trying to acquire it from outside, stop chasing credentials and accomplishments, hoping they'll make you feel powerful, and start tending to the flame that's always been there, waiting for your attention. The journey we're on together keeps revealing these layers, each one deeper than the last, each one bringing you closer to the truth of what's been available to you all along. And as that blue flame begins to burn brighter, as you feed it with authentic choices and genuine self-recognition, something begins to shift in how the world responds to you. Write in the comments, "My flame is burning brighter," because acknowledging its presence is how you begin feeding it intentionally. As that blue flame burns brighter within you, as you start consciously feeding it with authentic choices and genuine self-recognition, you might expect the path forward to become smooth and easy. But here's what actually happens, and understanding this will save you from misinterpreting what comes next. The brighter your flame burns, the more clearly you'll see the obstacles that have always been there but remained invisible in the darkness. And the most significant of these obstacles isn't external, it's the invisible wall of beliefs that's been controlling your reality from behind the scenes your entire life. This wall is more powerful than any physical barrier because you can see physical walls, you can plan around them, you can find ways over or through them. But an invisible wall? That's something else entirely. It stops you without you even realizing you've been stopped. It limits you while making you believe you're making free choices. And the most insidious part is that this wall was built so gradually, so subtly, brick by invisible brick, that you never saw it being constructed. Every phrase you heard as a child about money being scarce or hard to come by, that was a brick. Every moment you tried something and failed, then interpreted that failure as evidence of your limitation rather than as feedback. Another brick. Every experience where you felt overlooked, undervalued, or told you weren't enough. More bricks added to a wall that now stands between you and the abundance that should be flowing to you. Think about walking through your life right now with this wall surrounding you. You can't see it, but you can feel its effects. There are opportunities you don't pursue because something inside says, "That's not for me." There are amounts of money you won't allow yourself to charge or ask for because hitting that invisible ceiling feels wrong, dangerous, or presumptuous. There are levels of success you won't even imagine because the wall has defined the boundaries of what's possible for someone like you. And the tragic part is that this wall isn't made of truth. It's made entirely of interpreted experiences, inherited limitations, and beliefs that were never actually yours to begin with. The phrases that built this wall sounded so reasonable at the time. "Money doesn't grow on trees," taught you scarcity. "Who do you think you are?" taught you to stay small. "Don't get your hopes up," taught you to expect disappointment. "That's just how life is," taught you that struggle is inevitable and abundance is for other people. None of these were malicious. Most came from people who loved you, who were simply passing on the same limitations they had inherited, but each one added to the structure that now surrounds you, creating an invisible prison you've been living in without even realizing it's there. The impact of recognizing this wall cannot be overstated, because recognition is the first step toward dismantling it. You can't remove what you can't see, and you can't question what you don't know exists. But now that you're aware of it, now that you can feel how these invisible beliefs have been shaping every decision you make around money and success, something shifts. The wall starts to become less solid, less absolute. You begin to see that it's not made of concrete truth. It's made of interpretations, assumptions, and inherited programming that can be questioned. Every time you catch yourself thinking, "I can't afford that," when what you really mean is, "I'm choosing not to prioritize that," you're seeing through the wall. Every time you notice yourself playing small to keep others comfortable, you're recognizing a brick that doesn't belong to you. Every time you question whether a limiting belief is actually true or just something you've always assumed, you're beginning the process of deconstruction. And here's the profound truth that changes everything. This wall only seems solid because you've never tested it. The moment you start pushing against it with conscious awareness, the moment you begin questioning the beliefs that built it, you discover it's far more fragile than you imagined. Put in the comments, I see the wall and I'm walking through it. Because naming what's been invisible is how you begin to dissolve its power over your life. When you start seeing that invisible wall clearly, when you recognize it for what it is rather than accepting it as immutable truth, you'll notice something fascinating. The wall isn't uniform. It's not one solid mass of limitation. If you look closely, if you bring your attention to it with real curiosity, you'll see that different sections have different qualities. Some areas glow with a grayish light, almost pulsing with trapped energy, and each of these sections contains a specific limiting belief, a particular story you've been telling yourself about why abundance isn't available to you. Touch one of these sections with your awareness right now. Maybe it's the belief that says, "This isn't for me," the one that appears every time an opportunity presents itself that seems too good, too big, too aligned with what you actually want. Feel the pulse of that belief. There's emotion trapped behind it, disappointment from past experiences, fear of being disappointed again, the safer feeling of staying small rather than risking failure. Or maybe you touch the section that says, "I have no luck," that constant narrative that other people get the breaks, but somehow you're excluded from fortune's favor. Feel how that belief vibrates with resentment, with resignation, with a kind of bitter comfort in being the underdog. And then there's the belief that wealth itself is dangerous, that having money will corrupt you, separate you from the people you love, or make you into someone you don't want to be. That section of the wall pulses with fear, fear of change, fear of becoming someone your current circle won't recognize, fear that the price of prosperity is your integrity or authenticity. Each of these beliefs, every single section of the wall, contains trapped emotional energy that's been accumulating for years, sometimes decades. And the longer they've been there, the more solid they seem, the more true they feel. But here's the revelation that begins the process of dismantling this entire structure. These beliefs aren't facts, they're contracts. They're agreements you made with your past, signed without your conscious awareness, automatically renewed every day through your thoughts and behaviors. And just like any contract, they can be broken. They can be questioned, challenged, and ultimately dissolved. The key is asking a single question that most people never think to ask because they assume their beliefs are simply who they are rather than what they've adopted. The question is this: is this truly mine, or is this inherited? When you touch that section of the wall that says money is hard to come by, ask yourself where that came from. Did you arrive at that conclusion through your own experience, or did you absorb it from watching your parents struggle? When you feel the belief that you're not lucky, question its origin. Is that based on objective reality, or is it a story you started telling yourself after a few disappointments? A story that then became a self-fulfilling prophecy? When you encounter the fear that wealth will change you for the worse, investigate it. Is that your genuine concern, or is it something you inherited from a culture that's deeply conflicted about money? This question, this simple inquiry into whether a belief is actually yours, creates the first crack in the wall. Because the moment you recognize that you've been operating from someone else's limitation, from an inherited fear or an adopted story, the belief loses its grip. It stops being truth and becomes visible as what it always was: programming. And programming can be rewritten. The impact of this recognition ripples through your entire consciousness. Suddenly, beliefs that seemed absolute start revealing themselves as optional. Limitations that felt like permanent characteristics start looking like temporary conditions you can choose to change. Now, I want to go even deeper, because understanding that beliefs are contracts is just the beginning. The real transformation happens when you start actively choosing which contracts to honor and which ones to dissolve. When you take back your authority over the stories that have been running your life without permission. Leave a comment. I choose my own beliefs now, because claiming that power is how you begin rewriting the contracts that have kept you limited. Once you claim the power to choose your own beliefs, once you start actively rewriting those contracts that have been running unconsciously for years, something remarkable begins happening in the invisible architecture of your financial reality. And this is where things get truly fascinating, where the journey moves from understanding concepts to experiencing actual shifts in how abundance flows to you. You see, there are bank accounts in your life that aren't opened with paperwork, identification, or initial deposits. These accounts exist in a different dimension entirely, and they respond to something far more subtle than documentation. They respond to your internal decisions. Think of your mind as having a secret financial department that most people never know exists. This department operates 24 hours a day, evaluating every thought you have about money, every decision you make around resources, every behavior that signals your true relationship with abundance. And based on this constant evaluation, it's marking alerts. Red ones when you're operating out of alignment with prosperity, green ones when your actions match the frequency of wealth. The fascinating part is that this department doesn't care about your words, your affirmations, or your stated intentions. It only cares about what you're actually doing, who you're actually being, the choices you're making when you think nobody's watching. Every time you make a decision from scarcity, from fear, from the belief that there isn't enough, red alert. Your internal financial department registers that you're not ready for the next level, that opening new accounts of abundance wouldn't be safe because you'd sabotage them. But every time you make a choice from genuine abundance consciousness, from trust, from the certainty that you're worthy and capable, green alert. The department notes that you're aligning, that you're becoming someone who can handle greater flow, that new accounts can begin opening because you've demonstrated the internal readiness to manage them. And here's where most people get stuck. They're waiting for external circumstances to change before they start acting differently, before they start making aligned decisions. But the mechanism works in reverse. The external accounts, the opportunities, the wealth, they can only open after your internal department has given enough green alerts to approve the access. So the question becomes, how do you generate those green alerts? How do you manufacture the invisible keys that unlock accounts you didn't even know were waiting for you? The answer is both simple and profound. You start acting today as the person who already has the results. You're seeking, not in a fake way, not in a delusional way, but in a genuine embodiment of the identity that matches your desire. When someone who already has abundant wealth makes a decision, they don't agonize over small amounts. They don't operate from fear of loss. They invest in themselves without guilt. They expect good things to happen because that's been their consistent experience. So you start making decisions from that same place, even before the external reality matches it. This is what I call manufacturing invisible keys, taking minimal actions that have maximum impact on your internal frequency. It's declaring ownership of your goals without needing to justify or explain them to anyone, simply claiming them as yours with quiet certainty. It's consciously rejecting the old version of yourself, who played small, who waited for permission, who needed everything to be guaranteed before taking a step. And it's making small but meaningful investments in your future self, in your growth, in your expansion, especially when it feels uncomfortable or premature. Each of these actions, these manufactured keys, sends a signal to that secret financial department in your mind. It's a green alert that says, I'm changing, I'm aligning, I'm becoming someone who can receive more. And as those green alerts accumulate, as you consistently demonstrate through your choices that you're operating from a new identity, something invisible but very real begins to shift. Accounts you couldn't access before start becoming available. Opportunities that were closed suddenly open. Resources that seemed out of reach move within your grasp. Type in the comments, I'm manufacturing my keys now, because the act of declaring it activates the process of internal approval. As you manufacture these invisible keys through aligned actions and conscious choices, as you accumulate those green alerts in your internal financial department, you're going to be tempted to do something that will actually slow down your progress. It's a pattern so common, so automatic, that most people don't even realize they're doing it. And it's sabotaging their manifestation before it ever has a chance to solidify. I'm talking about the impulse to share your desires, your goals, your visions with everyone around you before they've had time to take root in your reality. There's a ritual that the most successful people practice, one so discreet and subtle that it often goes completely unnoticed. But practitioners of this ritual see something extraordinary happen in their lives. Sales start growing without obvious explanation. Ideas flow with unusual clarity. Opportunities seem to double out of nowhere, and money arrives from directions they never anticipated. The ritual isn't complicated. It doesn't require special tools or elaborate practices. In fact, it's defined entirely by what you don't do rather than what you do. It's the practice of fertile silence, of keeping your emerging desires protected in the darkness where they can germinate properly before being exposed to the harsh light of external opinion. Think about how a seed works. When you plant it in soil, it doesn't immediately break through the surface reaching for sunlight. First, it sits in darkness, in silence, in what might look like nothing is happening at all. But beneath the surface, invisible to anyone watching, the seed is cracking open, sending roots down into the earth, gathering strength and resources. Only after this invisible gestation period does the sprout finally emerge into visibility. Your desires, your financial goals, your visions for greater abundance, they work exactly the same way. When a desire is first born, it's fragile, delicate, still forming its structure. And if you expose it too soon to external energy, it withers before it can develop the strength to survive. Ancient wealth guardians understood this principle deeply, and they taught it simply: desire germinates in darkness. Harvest is celebrated in light. But somewhere along the way, modern culture convinced us that we should share everything immediately, post our goals publicly for accountability, tell everyone what we're working toward. And while that might work for some things, for the deepest desires around wealth and abundance, this premature exposure is often fatal to the manifestation. Here's why. When you share your emerging desire with others before it's solidified in your own energy field, you're inviting their doubts, their fears, their limitations into the space where your vision is trying to form. Even people who love you, people who want the best for you, carry their own relationship with money, their own beliefs about what's possible, their own fears about what happens when someone they know succeeds beyond the norm. And when you share your vision with them too early, their energy, however well-intentioned, starts mixing with yours. Their doubts become questions in your mind. Their fears become hesitations in your actions. Their beliefs about limitation start contaminating the pure frequency of your desire. And suddenly what felt clear and possible when it was just yours becomes murky and questionable once it's been filtered through external consciousness. The impact of understanding this principle of fertile silence is profound because it changes how you hold your emerging visions. Instead of immediately sharing every new idea, every financial goal, every opportunity, you're exploring, you learn to protect them. You keep them close, working with them internally, allowing them to strengthen in the protected space of your own consciousness. You feed them with your attention, your emotion, your aligned action, but you don't expose them to the unpredictable weather of other people's reactions until they're strong enough to withstand it. This doesn't mean you become secretive or isolated. It means you become strategic about who gets access to your emerging reality and when. There's a time for celebration, a time for sharing, a time for bringing others into your vision. But that time comes after the desire has taken root, after it's developed its own stability, after you've claimed it so completely in your own consciousness that external doubt simply can't penetrate anymore. Write in the comments, "I protect my vision in fertile silence," because declaring your commitment to this practice is how you begin honoring the gestation period your desires need. When you practice this fertile silence, when you protect your emerging visions from premature exposure and allow them to strengthen in the darkness of your own consciousness, something beautiful starts happening. You become more attuned to a frequency that's always been broadcasting, but that you've probably been too distracted to notice. It's what I call the whispering voice, and it's one of the most valuable navigational tools you possess on this journey toward abundance. Yet most people go their entire lives without ever consciously hearing it. This voice doesn't announce itself loudly. It doesn't compete with the noise of your daily thoughts or the opinions of everyone around you. It appears as a barely perceptible instant, a moment so subtle that if you're not paying attention, you'll miss it entirely. But in that instant, life is actually warning you that something significant is about to occur. You might feel it as a whisper in your mind, a soft vibration in your chest, an unexplainable pull toward a certain direction or decision. And what makes this so powerful is that this whisper arrives before opportunities become visible, before synchronicities manifest, before the external reality reflects what's already moving in the invisible realm. Think about the times in your life when you had a hunch about something, a quiet knowing that you should reach out to a specific person, explore a particular opportunity, or make a certain move, and you ignored it because it didn't make logical sense at the time. Then weeks or months later, you discovered that following that impulse would have led to exactly what you needed. That wasn't coincidence. That was the whispering voice trying to guide you, and you weren't yet attuned to its frequency. But now, as you've been clearing away the shadows, breaking inherited contracts, feeding your internal flame, and protecting your visions in fertile silence, you're becoming more receptive. The signal is the same, but your ability to receive it is sharpening. This whisper operates on a different timeline than your logical mind. It knows about opportunities before they materialize. It senses connections before they become obvious. It feels the movement of abundance in your direction before any external evidence appears. And learning to trust this voice, learning to distinguish it from fear or wishful thinking, becomes one of the most practical skills you can develop. The whispering voice is calm, never anxious. It's brief and clear, never complicated or confusing. It arrives as a simple knowing, a gentle pull, a quiet certainty that this is the next step, even when you can't see the entire staircase. But the whispering voice is actually an expression of something even deeper, something that ancient sages understood and modern seekers are rediscovering. There's a silent force that lives within each person, a magnetic core of being that most people never activate because they're too busy chasing external solutions. These ancient teachers observed that whoever manages to activate this internal magnet experiences a very specific sequence of attraction. First comes peace, a settling of the constant anxiety and striving that characterized their previous relationship with money. Then comes clarity. Suddenly, they can see the path forward. The decisions become obvious. The confusion dissolves. After clarity, opportunities begin appearing with unusual frequency, as if the universe has been reorganizing itself around their new frequency. And finally, almost as a natural consequence of everything that came before, abundant wealth starts flowing. Not because they worked harder or discovered some secret strategy, but because they activated the magnet that was always there, dormant, waiting for conscious engagement. This magnetic core isn't something you create. It's something you uncover by removing all the interference patterns we've been discussing throughout this entire journey. The impact of activating this hidden magnet is transformative because it shifts you from pushing and forcing to allowing and attracting. You stop trying to make things happen through sheer will and start moving in alignment with a force that's far more powerful than individual effort. And the whispering voice? That's how the magnet communicates with you, guiding you toward the people, places, and opportunities that match your emerging frequency. Leave a comment. I hear the whisper, and I'm following. It be because acknowledging that you're listening is how you strengthen your connection to this inner guidance. As you strengthen your connection to that whispering voice, as you learn to follow its guidance, even when logic hasn't caught up yet, you'll start noticing something that completely reframes how you understand manifestation and abundance. There's an invisible river flowing all around you right now, made not of water but of pure intention. And this river has a very specific function. It connects your desires with the circumstances, people, and opportunities capable of making them real. You can't see this river with your physical eyes, but you can absolutely feel its current when you're aligned with it, when you're moving in harmony with its flow rather than fighting against it. This river has a name that reveals its true nature, the flow of deservingness. And understanding how it operates changes everything about how you approach wealth creation. The river activates and strengthens with every thought of genuine worthiness. Every moment you claim your desires without apologizing. Every decision you make from abundance rather than scarcity. But it slows down, weakens, and eventually stops flowing altogether when doubt enters the picture. When you question whether you really deserve what you're asking for, when you contradict your desires with your beliefs. Think of this river as intelligent water that responds to your internal frequency, expanding when you're in alignment and contracting when you're in resistance. Most people experience this river as occasional coincidences or rare moments of synchronicity, never realizing that what they're glimpsing is actually a constant current that could be carrying them toward their goals continuously if they learned how to stay in it. When you meet exactly the right person at exactly the right time, that's the river. When an opportunity appears out of nowhere that perfectly matches what you've been envisioning, that's the river. When resources show up just when you need them most, that's the river. But instead of recognizing these as evidence of a constant flow you can tap into, most people dismiss them as luck or random chance and immediately step back out of the current through doubt or unworthiness. The journey we've been on together, every insight you've received, every shadow you've illuminated, every contract you've broken, every key you've manufactured, all of it has been preparing you for this moment. Because you've now reached what I call the final recognition, the threshold where everything inverts. Up until now, you've probably been chasing wealth, pursuing opportunities, trying to make abundance happen through effort and strategy. But there's a point in this evolution where the dynamic completely reverses, where you stop chasing wealth and wealth starts chasing you. This isn't metaphorical. When your consciousness fully awakens to its relationship with abundance, when all the internal contradictions have been resolved and you're operating from genuine alignment, something profound happens in the invisible architecture of reality. Abundance itself, which operates as a kind of intelligence, a force that's constantly seeking vessels capable of receiving and circulating it, recognizes you. It selects you. It begins following you, finding you, seeking you out, because you've become someone who no longer contradicts what you desire. You've stopped pushing wealth away with unconscious unworthiness, while simultaneously pulling it toward you with conscious intention. The impact of reaching this threshold cannot be adequately described because it moves you into an entirely different category of experience. You're no longer hoping for opportunities. They're appearing without you having to search. You're no longer worried about money. It's flowing from directions you never anticipated. You're no longer trying to prove your worth. It's simply evident in how you move through the world and how the world responds to you. This is what happens when the river of deservingness becomes your natural habitat rather than something you occasionally stumble into. And here's what makes this moment so significant. You wouldn't have made it this far. You wouldn't be reading these words right now if some part of you wasn't already standing at this threshold, ready to cross. The final recognition isn't something you achieve through more effort. It's something you allow by finally releasing the last remnants of resistance. Type in the comments, "Wealth recognizes me now," because declaring it is how you step fully into the current that's been waiting for you all along. If you've made it all the way here, if you're still with me after this entire journey through shadows and thresholds, invisible rivers and hidden magnets, then something profound has already shifted in you. You're not the same person who started watching this video. That version of you, the one who was still negotiating with abundance, who was still carrying inherited limitations, that version is dissolving as we speak. And what's emerging is someone who finally understands that wealth isn't something you chase. It's something that recognizes you when you've become the right frequency. This channel exists for people like you, people who are ready to go deeper than surface-level advice, who want to understand the invisible mechanics behind how reality actually works. If this resonated with you, if you felt that pull of recognition as these concepts unfolded, then do yourself a favor and subscribe, because what we explore here isn't available anywhere else in quite this way, and every video is designed to take you further into your own awakening. You've invested this much time in yourself already. Let's make sure you don't miss what's coming next. And if you want to mark this moment, if you want to leave evidence that you were here and that this message landed exactly when it needed, to drop a comment saying, "This message was meant for me. I read these, and there's something powerful about declaring it publicly, about letting the universe know you're claiming this shift." Hit that like button too, because it helps this reach other people who are standing at their own threshold right now, people who need to hear exactly what you just heard. Your simple click might be what puts this in front of someone whose life is about to change. And listen, there's a video right here that goes even deeper into how to maintain this frequency once you've activated it, how to navigate the inevitable tests that come when you start operating from a new level of consciousness. Click and continue with me over there. The journey's just beginning.